I want to share with you a story that will lift your spirit and open your heart to the reality of eternity. A story of a woman named Eleliana Morel from South Carolina, a woman who walked through the valley of death and returned with a message of hope and awakening. Life had been normal for Eleliana. She was a believer, a mother, a sister in Christ, living her days with quiet faith and gentle strength. But one day, her body began to fail her. What started as simple tiredness grew into deep exhaustion that no amount of rest could fix. Doctors ran test after test, but the answers only brought more questions, and soon the verdict came: a terminal illness. The hospital became her second home, and each passing day felt like time was slowly slipping away. Yet, in those quiet, sterile rooms where fear often tries to whisper defeat, God was preparing to show her something that would change her life forever. On one particular night, as her body lay weak and frail, she tried to rest, but her mind was restless. Her heart was heavy, but her spirit was wide awake. Then suddenly, everything began to change. The walls around her seemed to fade. The sounds of the hospital grew distant, and in a moment she saw something she couldn't explain herself, lying still on that bed. She saw the tubes, the blinking machines, the cold light above her, but she wasn't inside that body anymore. She was standing beside it, looking down, aware, alive, and more real than she had ever felt before. Confused and afraid, she tried to touch her body, but her hand passed right through, like she was made of air. Then came a gentle pull, like an invisible hand drawing her away, and before she knew it, she was outside the hospital, standing in the stillness of the night. She turned and saw the building glowing faintly behind her, and though the world seemed normal, she knew she had crossed into something beyond the physical. In the distance, she saw a soft light, like a train station shining through the mist. Something deep within her spirit told her to go there, and without walking, she began to glide forward, as if carried by peace itself. When she arrived, she found herself standing on a vast platform, unlike any she had seen before. The air was calm, but heavy with mystery. Above the platform, a board shimmered faintly, though she couldn't read what was written. Then she noticed something remarkable. There were exactly 31 seats arranged neatly in a row. People stood nearby, quiet and still, their faces filled with a strange mix of peace, concern, and wonder. She tried to speak, but her voice made no sound. Then, in the distance, she heard something, a low hum that grew louder and clearer, the steady rhythm of a train approaching. Everyone turned toward the sound. Out of the mist came a beautiful silver train, gleaming as though made of light itself. It stopped silently before them, and when its doors opened, exactly 31 people stepped forward and entered. She counted 1, 2, 3, all the way to 31. No more, no less. When the last passenger entered, the doors closed softly, and the train moved away into the mist until it disappeared completely. Then another train came, and again 31 people entered. Then another. The pattern continued, train after train, each carrying 31 souls, each departing in perfect order, never late, never early. Everything was calm, precise, and full of meaning, though she couldn't yet understand what it meant. By the time the 9th train left, Eleliana felt a deep unease growing in her heart. Something was about to change. Then she saw the 10th train appear out of the fog. It looked just like the others, but as it approached, the air seemed heavier. When it stopped, the doors opened gently, and this time only 7 people stepped forward. She counted again and again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, And then nothing. The platform that had always been filled with passengers now sat empty. The remaining seats stayed vacant, waiting for those who never came. Time seemed to freeze. Minutes felt like hours. The 7 passengers stood silently before entering the train, their faces calm but solemn. When the doors closed, the train waited, as though expecting more people, but no one else arrived. Then, slowly, it began to move, vanishing into the mist just like the others. Silence fell. The platform that once pulsed with quiet motion was now still. No other trains came. No other sounds could be heard. Then the lights above her began to flicker one by one. They went out until the entire station was swallowed in darkness. But this wasn't the kind of darkness we experience at night. This was living darkness, thick, heavy, and alive. It carried a presence that made her heart tremble. Then she began to hear something faint whispers, soft at first, then louder and closer. They grew into cries, cries that pierced through the darkness, cries of people shouting for help, weeping in regret and despair. It was as though she was hearing the voices of souls, realizing too late that something precious had been lost. She could feel their pain, their longing, their fear. The air was filled with sorrow, with the weight of eternal consequence. And then, in an instant, it all stopped. The cries faded, the darkness lifted, and she felt a powerful force pull her backward, faster and faster through what seemed like a tunnel of light. With one gasp, she opened her eyes, and she was back in her hospital bed. The doctors were amazed. They said her condition was improving, though they couldn't explain why. But Aleliana knew something greater had taken place. 2 days passed, and her body grew stronger, yet her heart couldn't stop thinking about what she had seen, the trains, the seats, the 7 passengers, and the darkness that followed. Then one evening, her church friends came to pray with her. The room was filled with peace, with worship, with the presence of God. As they prayed, something stirred deep within her. It was as if a curtain in her spirit was pulled back, and suddenly she could see the vision again, clearer, brighter, deeper. Then she heard it. The still, gentle voice of God speaking to her heart. He said, "What you saw was not a dream but a revelation of time." He showed her that each train represented a month of the year, and that the 31 seats stood for the days within that month. Each one counted, ordered, and known by him. But the 10th train, with only 7 passengers, was a picture of October, a time that would not be complete like the others, a season where only a few would remain faithful. The 7 passengers represented a small remnant, those who would keep their faith and stand firm even when the world turns away. And the darkness that followed the 10th train was not just the end of a vision, it was a warning, a glimpse of what happens when light leaves the world, when grace is withdrawn, and hearts grow cold. That day, Aleliana understood. This was not just about her, it was about all of us. The trains were moving, time was passing, and eternity was drawing closer. God was saying, "Be ready. Stay faithful. Keep watch." My friend, maybe today you feel weary or uncertain about the future. But let me remind you, just as God counted those days, He is also counting yours. Every moment is written in His calendar. Every breath is a gift of grace. Don't wait until the platform grows empty, until the light flickers out. Today is the day to make things right with God, to forgive, to love, to live ready. Because one day, the final train will come, and when it does, may it find you standing in faith, heart full of peace, eyes lifted toward heaven, ready to board the glory train that never returns to darkness. As Leliana sat surrounded by her church family, their hands joined and their voices lifted in gentle worship, she felt a stillness come over the room that was unlike anything she had ever known. The air was filled with peace, but beneath that peace was a holy weight, a sense that heaven itself was drawing near. As they prayed, she wasn't thinking about her vision anymore. She was just grateful to be alive, to feel the warmth of God's presence after walking through the shadow of death. But then, without warning, something began to stir deep inside her spirit. It was as though a curtain she didn't even know existed had been pulled back, and suddenly the vision she thought was behind her came rushing back with vivid clarity. She saw the platform again, the glowing trains, the rows of 31 seats, and the mysterious rhythm of departures that had puzzled her soul. This time, though, she didn't feel confused or afraid. Instead, she felt an overwhelming calm, a certainty that God Himself was about to explain what all of this meant. Then came the voice, not loud or thunderous, but gentle and powerful, like truth speaking directly into her heart. It wasn't in words she heard with her ears, it was revelation she felt in her spirit. God began to unveil the mystery, showing her that what she saw was not just a strange dream, but a picture of time itself. Each train, He said to her heart, represents a month of the year, and every seat you saw each of the 31 is a day within that month, counted and ordered in my perfect design. As those words filled her, everything suddenly made sense. She saw the beauty of divine order, how every moment of our lives is not random, but carefully numbered by the one who holds time in His hands. The trains arriving one after another symbolized the flow of time, each month coming and going exactly as God has appointed. Nothing early, nothing late. Life itself was like those trains, constant, moving, purposeful, and under divine control. But then God drew her attention to the 10th train, the one that had troubled her spirit the most, the one that carried only 7 passengers instead of 31. As she looked at it again, she noticed details she hadn't seen before the dimmer light, the heavy air, the sense of sadness that filled the station when so many seats remained empty. Then she heard that still, small voice again, saying, "The 10th train represents the month of October." Her heart trembled as she realized what God was revealing. "The reason only 7 passengers entered," the Lord said, "is because October will be unlike the months before it. It will be a time that feels shortened, incomplete, and filled with spiritual weight. The 7 passengers are a symbol of a faithful remnant, those who will remain steadfast when others turn away." Leliana could hardly breathe as the revelation sank in. She understood that the trains were not just carrying people, they were carrying souls through the seasons of time. Each departure represented a generation, a window of grace, an opportunity for hearts to be ready. But the 10th train was different. It marked a turning point, a moment when the world would grow darker, when faith would be tested, and when only a few would stay true to God's calling. The 7 passengers represented the ones who would endure, the believers who would stand firm in love, truth, and obedience, even when others lose sight of heaven's light. And then she remembered the darkness that had fallen after the 10th train departed. She had seen the flickering lights fade one by one, felt the chill of emptiness, heard the cries of lost souls echoing through the void. Now, she understood it was not just a frightening vision, it was a prophecy, a warning of what happens when the world turns away from God's truth, when the light of faith begins to fade from hearts that once burned bright. The darkness symbolized a coming season of shaking, when everything built on sand would crumble, when nations would tremble, and when comfort would no longer be found in the things of this world. It was a message that time was running short, that grace, though abundant, would not wait forever. Yet even in that revelation, God's love shone brighter than fear. He made her understand that the darkness was not sent to destroy, but to awaken. It was a call for his people to rise up, to cling to their faith, to be like those 7 passengers who refused to miss the train even when others did not show up. "Few will be ready," God whispered, "but those who are ready will shine like stars in the night." As the Lord continued to speak, Eleliana's tears flowed freely, not from sorrow but from awe. She saw that even in judgment, there was mercy. Even in chaos, there was divine order. God was not revealing these things to frighten her, but to remind the world that He is still in control, that every month, every day, every heartbeat still belongs to Him. She thought about how many people live without realizing that time is sacred, that each sunrise is a gift, each sunset a warning that the day is done. The trains in her vision were not mechanical, they were spiritual, carrying souls through the seasons of grace, and each departure was another reminder that eternity is closer than we think. The 10th train, with its 7 passengers, was not a story of despair, it was a story of hope, the hope that even when most of the world turns away, God still has His faithful few. He always keeps a remnant, a people who refuse to bow to the darkness, who keep their lamps burning even when the night grows long. As the revelation unfolded, she realized the trains also carried a rhythm of mercy, showing that God's plan is never random. Each month, each day, each opportunity is a chance for redemption. The emptiness of the 10th train was heaven's way of saying, "There's still room, there's still time to get ready." And though the darkness came, it was also a sign that the dawn of eternity was near. As she sat there, overwhelmed by the weight of what she now knew, Eleliana understood her mission: to share this message, to remind people that life is not endless, that time is not guaranteed, and that every soul has a ticket to eternity. It's just a matter of whether they choose to use it. She knew the vision of the trains was not about fear, but about faith, not about doom, but about decision. God was calling His children to prepare, to watch, and to stay faithful in the season ahead. And so, she made a vow that day, to live ready, to speak boldly, and to never forget that the same God who controls the trains of time also holds her heart. And maybe, just maybe, He's whispering that same message to us today, to stay alert, to keep our faith strong, and to remember that when the last train comes, it won't matter how much we owned or achieved, only whether our hearts were ready to go where He's calling us next. When Eleliana woke from her experience, she knew deep in her spirit that what she had seen was not just for her, but for the world. It wasn't a dream, it wasn't a hallucination, it was a divine warning, a glimpse into heaven's calendar that revealed how close we truly are to the return of Christ. From that day forward, she carried a fire in her heart that she couldn't contain, a message she knew she had to share with anyone who would listen. Time is running short, and the world is entering its final season. She would say, "Friends, this isn't a time to be afraid. It's a time to wake up." The same God who showed her those 10 trains was still calling His people to prepare. In the quiet of her prayer time, she felt the Spirit speak again, reminding her that just as the 10th train had come with only 7 passengers, the world too would see a moment when only a few would remain faithful, when many hearts would grow cold and distracted by the noise of life. The signs are already all around us, wars breaking out, nations rising against nations, the weather growing more extreme, the earth shaking both physically and spiritually. Families are divided, love is fading, and truth is being traded for comfort. Yet through all of this, God is still calling His children to stand strong, to keep their faith, to lift their eyes toward heaven. She began to share her story, not to entertain, but to awaken. Her message was simple yet powerful. Stay ready and faithful. She would remind people that faith isn't about fear of the end, it's about the hope of what comes after. Even when the world seems dark, she said, keep watching, because Jesus is coming back at a moment no one expects. Her words echoed the same truth Jesus spoke in the Gospels. 2 will be in the field. 1 will be taken and the other left. 2 will be sleeping, and 1 will hear the trumpet sound while the other will not. Leliana understood now that her vision of the train station wasn't just about time passing, it was a prophecy about readiness, about being awake in a world that's fallen asleep. She often compared what she saw to the days of Noah. In those times, people laughed, ate, and lived as though nothing would ever change, until the moment the rain began to fall. Noah didn't know the exact hour the flood would come, but he knew it would come, and so he kept building the ark, day after day, with faith and obedience. And when the door finally closed, those inside were saved, while those outside realized too late that they had missed their chance. That's what I saw in my vision, Leliana said. When the 10th train left and the doors closed, no one else could enter. The light went out, the voices cried in the dark, and time was over. She would look straight into the eyes of her listeners and say, "Don't wait until the door closes to get ready. Don't wait for the 11th train that will never come." From that moment on, she lived every day with purpose. Every sunrise reminded her that God had given the world another day of mercy. Every sunset reminded her that one day, that mercy would end and the final train would depart. "We are living in borrowed time," she often said, "and every breath is God's way of saying, there's still room for one more." Her message wasn't meant to frighten people, but to stir their hearts to help them see that eternity isn't far away. God doesn't want us to panic, she said. He wants us to prepare. The trains in her vision were never chaotic or rushed. They moved in perfect order, each one on time, each one following God's divine plan. And in that same way, she believed that everything happening in our world today, every shaking, every change, every trial, was not random, but part of God's divine schedule. She urged believers everywhere to stop chasing the temporary and start seeking the eternal. "Pray daily," she said. "Keep your heart clean, forgive quickly. Don't let bitterness or distraction steal your peace." She knew how easy it was to drift through life, to think we have more time, but her experience taught her that time can change in an instant. "You may not have another season," she said. "You may not have another train." Her voice would rise with passion as she spoke about faith, not the kind of faith that sits comfortably in church pews, but the kind that stands firm in the storm, that clings to God when everything else is falling apart. "This world is shaking," she said, "but God's word will never shake. His promises are still true. His light still shines, even when darkness falls." Leliana's testimony began to spread far beyond her small town in South Carolina. People from around the world reached out, sharing how her story had stirred something in their hearts, a conviction to pray more, to love deeper, to live ready. She always reminded them, "Don't be like the passengers who never showed up for the 10th train. Be among the 7 who stayed faithful." She knew that number wasn't about literal count, but about spiritual truth, that in the final days few would remain steadfast, but those few would carry the light of Christ through the darkness. "You may feel like you're standing alone," she would say, "but remember, 7 was enough. God always preserves a remnant. He always keeps his promise." And as she shared her message, her own life became a living example of what it means to stay ready. She found peace in prayer, strength in forgiveness, and joy in small acts of kindness. She stopped worrying about what she couldn't control and started focusing on what mattered most, walking closely with Jesus. "If I've learned anything," she said, "it's that the light we carry in our hearts is the only thing that can outshine the coming darkness." Even as the world seemed to grow more unstable, she stood firm in faith, believing that the same God who held the trains of time still held her life in his hands. Now, every time she looked at the sky, she felt that same stirring in her spirit, that quiet whisper of eternity drawing near. "One day," she said, "we'll all hear that final call, the trumpet sound that says it's time to come home." Until that day, she made it her mission to remind everyone she met that the greatest decision anyone could make is to be ready for that moment. "Don't get caught sleeping," she'd say with a smile. "Keep your lamp full of oil. Keep your eyes on the horizon, because when the King comes, he won't delay." And so, Eleliana's story became more than a vision, it became a living sermon. A testimony that even in the final hour, God's mercy is reaching out, calling each of us to return, to believe, to stay faithful. Her words echo like a melody of hope across generations. Stay ready, stay faithful, keep your eyes on Jesus, because when that last train comes, it won't wait for anyone, and those who are ready will step into eternal light, while the rest will be left in darkness. And with every sunrise she saw after that, Eleliana would whisper the same prayer, not in fear, but in peace. "Lord, let today be the day someone boards the train of grace before the door finally closes."